The Thousand Year Blood War arc is to many, including myself, one of the best, if not the best story arc in the entire series. It offers some of the highest moments within the whole story, starting from the impressive first Quincy invasion, which gives us multiple fantastic character moments, such as the iconic Save the Soul Society scene, the heartbreaking Byakuya vs Asnod battle, and the spectacular final battle of Head Captain Yamamoto against Yhwach. The first invasion is a story segment filled with numerous standout moments, and it successfully conveys the massive threat the Quincy army poses to the Soul Society, as well as the incredible tension created by the Soul Society's despair at Ichigo's absence. This tension quickly turns to hope when Yamamoto arrives onto the battlefield and begins to face off against Yhwach, but that great hope is quickly dashed and submerged in darker depths of despair when Yamamoto ends up being killed during his battle against Yhwach. Yet despair turns to hope once again when Ichigo Kurosaki arrives onto the battlefield. Now this roller coaster of hope and despair is part of what makes this first segment of the story arc so engaging. Now don't let my praise for the first Quincy invasion fool you into thinking that it gets worse afterwards. Following this, we get what most fans would refer to as the greatest segment of the Bleach story, the Everything But the Rain mini arc, which leads into The Blade Is Me. This arc has received universal praise for being one of the most beautiful expressions of character writing within all of Bleach and the shonen genre as a whole. It is then followed by an incredibly engaging sequence of fights as the Soul Society prepares for the second invasion of the Quincy and all of the madness that unfolds after it. Honestly, there are a lot of praiseworthy moments about the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and maybe I could even make a video on everything awesome about it, but sadly this isn't that video. For everything great about Bleach's final arc, you can find something equally bad in its ending segment. And we all know the events surrounding Bleach's ending, but unfortunately the pain from some of the disappointments of the Thousand Year Blood War arc is so great that I felt the need to discuss them in a standalone video. So in this video, I'm going to go over what I believe to be the top 5 most disappointing moments during the Thousand Year Blood War arc. This list is purely subjective, so I'd love to hear exactly what you agree or disagree with me on during this ranking video. So with all of this said, here are my top 5 worst disappointments from the Thousand Year Blood War arc. Before the video begins, only 12% of the people who watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. In the number 5 spot is one of my biggest disappointments that I had with the final arc, with how it had underutilized the character of Yushiro Ukitake in the final arc. When most people think of wasted potential in Bleach, Ukitake is one character who definitely comes to mind. We had everything necessary to make him a fan favorite character. He was a genuinely sweet and kind captain, which may seem unremarkable because we're talking about the hero side here, but have you seen some of the other captains? You got the likes of the psychotic Mayuri, the bipolar Yachiru Unohana, and the demonic monster from hell Yamamoto. So it makes a lot of sense that fans will be drawn towards Ukitake's character, but unfortunately Bleach's story gives him very little to work with outside of him being sick all of the time. But something interesting happens during the Thousand Year Blood War arc. Following the events of the first Quincy invasion, Ukitake seems to undergo some secret procedure that he calls the Kamikake, with Shunsui even stating that he should be able to exert himself a bit more after it. This results in both curiosity and excitement, as we're now wondering if we're going to finally get a chance to see Ukitake fight, and maybe even utilize his Bankai, and curiosity about just what this Kamikake ability is. But unfortunately, only one of these questions is ever answered. We find out that the Kamikake is the right hand of the Soul King, and it was sealed within Ukitake. He called upon its powers in order to save the world that was now falling apart due to the Soul King's death. Ukitake even says that he is willing to become the new Soul King, but this interesting development is given no chance to blossom, as Yhwach rips Mimihagi from his body and kills him during the process. However, thanks to all of the new information that we learned from the New Breeds from Hell one-shot chapter, we find out that Ukitake's story hasn't quite ended just yet, and there's every chance that we're going to see more of him within the Bleach story, hence why I've ranked Ukitake's wasted potential in the number 5 spot of this list. The 4th worst disappointment in the series might seem a bit unusual, but please hear me out first. I find it disappointing that after the rather confusing events of the final battle, there is little to no real aftermath of the fight. I would have loved if there was a dedicated chapter showcasing all of the damage across the realms of Bleach following the death of Yhwach. A quick glimpse at the situation within Hueco Mundo Ichigo, and generally some time for the Bleach universe to just take in the aftermath of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. However, I understand that Kubo didn't have much of a choice when all he had was 5 chapters to wrap up the story and to end it. But I really wish that we could see Ichigo and Aizen interact after the end of the fight, and how the Soul Society would start to restore things after the carnage that had taken place within it. This would have given the incidents that had occurred a new narrative weight. I think it would have really stuck with us if you got to see what kind of a mark De Quincey had left upon the world. Instead, the story completely skips all of this and it goes 10 years into the future where everything is restored and the world is now at peace. But in all honesty, this is mostly inconsequential since we do get some of the aftermath within segments of the Can't For Your Own World light novels. So once again, this isn't as much of a problem aside from my wishing that we got to see it within the manga. So that's why it is ranked in the 4th spot. Taking the 3rd spot is the Askin versus Urahara battle. Now this fight had me very excited the moment that I realized it was going to happen. My love for both of these characters sent my expectations sky high. I expected the two of them to go all out with what each of them do best. Askin with his incredibly ridiculous powers, and Urahara with his big brain planning and ability to cook up a counter to the most specific and random situations. Unfortunately, the battle between Askin and Urahara is very underwhelming and we barely get much of a fight in the end. It can be summed up as follows. Askin fires a gift ball that destroys Urahara's eyes. Urahara responds by activating his Bankai, and he uses it to fix his eyes and knocks Askin around a few times, and he then summons Grimmjow to finish off Askin. This fight had occurred when Bleach's pacing had started to pick up, and it was one of the aspects that had suffered the most. Urahara's Bankai feels like it was revealed solely for the purpose of being released, and even now, the full scope and limitations of his abilities within his Bankai state remain unknown. Now, you might think that if Urahara didn't get much of a chance to shine during this fight, then Askin would have had at least a bit more screen time. Although our familiarity with Askin's powers began significantly earlier on from this fight, he still doesn't show many of his techniques and abilities, and he barely puts up much of a fight before Grimmjow sneaks up behind him and kills him. The ending of this fight was also quite anticlimactic due to how abruptly it had happened. It is a fight that I hope gets some major expansion within the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime by Taguchi and his team, because in its current manga state, I do think that it's underwhelming. In the number 2 spot, we have another disappointment that was caused by the pacing issues that had plagued the final chapters of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc. These extremely rushed battles towards the end of the series represent one of the major failures of the final arc of Bleach. It's Kubo's inability to meaningfully follow up on all of the developments that were promised earlier on in the arc. Almost no fight embodies this worse than our second ranked most disappointing moment, which is the battle between Hashward and Uryu Ishida. The first and most disappointing aspect of this fight is that it shares its screen time with Kinpachi and the captain's battle against Gerard. While this is a great fight in its own right, it does take away from Uryu's encounter with Hashward, and Uryu was a character who is being built upon throughout the entirety of this arc as an absolute powerhouse who may have the potential to surpass Yhwach. Now, we didn't even get a chance to see his immense power in action, and to make matters worse, immediately after the Gerard fight, the screen time is split between Uryu's fight with Hashward and Ichigo and Orihime's battle against Yhwach. It's disheartening to see that the two main characters of this arc can't even have a chapter for themselves for their respective fights. This essentially reduces Uryu's entire battle with Hashward to a brief showcase of Shrift powers, which Hashward easily wins. However, before he can finish off Uryu, Yhwach's Ashwalin absorbs him, ending their battle in a ridiculously anticlimactic manner. This gives us zero payoff to all of the build-up that Uryu's character had received throughout all of this arc, and it relegates him to sharing a fight chapter with Ichigo due to Kubo's limited time, which was all a result of his failing health at the time that these chapters were published. It was extremely sad to see this all unfold, and I sincerely hope that the anime is able to give this titanic clash the attention and production quality that it deserves. We all know that the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime is going to be expanding upon key moments of the final arc, and I have no doubt in my mind that when Uryu vs Hashward takes place during Core 4 of the anime, it will definitely be expanded upon and given much more love in the anime. Taking the number 1 spot, regrettably, is the entire final battle against Yhwach. The only part that I genuinely enjoyed without reservation was when Ichigo and Orihime had fought Yhwach. It was a fantastic character moment for both of them that could have been expanded upon, but I'm content with what we had received within the manga. Following this, we have Ichigo in his Horn of Salvation form against Yhwach, which was somewhat lacking. The fight had felt like an excuse for Ichigo to use his Gran Rey Sero Getsuga Suga Tensho, also that the story could move on to show how cool it was for Yhwach to snap his Bankai before we even got to see it. Yuha then proceeds to completely drain Ichigo of all of his powers, and then we have Aizen vs Yhwach, which ends up being rather anticlimactic because we barely get to see the two of them fight, despite the fantastic way that Aizen introduces Yhwach to his Soul Society. Now this battle, if you can call it that, is extremely brief and it only serves to prove that Aizen's Kyokasui Getsu could deceive the Almighty, but this revelation goes nowhere in the end. Yhwach's ultimate defeat comes from the Still Silver Arrowhead that conveniently disables all of his powers, allowing Ichigo the opportunity to kill Yuha with a finisher that is both epic and a bit confusing. In all honesty, my disappointment with this fight stems from the lack of meaning given to the events that occur and just how brief every good aspect of this final battle is. With all of this said, our hopes now rest with the Bleach animation staff in order to turn some of these disappointments into some absolute masterpieces, because all of these moments that I have listed within this video have the potential to be some of the greatest moments within Bleach if only they are given just a bit more love and attention. Now we are at the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your biggest disappointments from the 1000 Year Blood War arc or in Bleach in general? Personally, I love the Bleach story and I don't really have any issue with it before the 1000 Year Blood War arc, and my biggest disappointments stem from the final arc. If you agree with my picks for the worst disappointments, then let me know in the comments. If you have your own 1000 Year Blood War arc most disappointing moments, then also list them in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.